Welcome back to Liars and Lovers, the podcast where we explore the complicated intersection of relationships, deception, betrayal, and the moments when love can sometimes take a very dark turn. Today's conversation is a really important one. We often hear people ask, how could they not see the warning signs? Or why didn't they just leave? But the reality of an abusive relationship is far more complicated than the outside world actually understands. My guest today is Claudia King, a law and crime TV analyst, survivor, and domestic violence expert. Claudia brings a unique perspective to this conversation, not only through her professional experience analyzing some of the most complex criminal cases, but also through her personal experience as a survivor. Today, we're talking about the warning signs that can be hidden behind love and affection. We're talking about manipulation, control, gaslighting, love bombing, stalking, and all the various ways relationships can sometimes escalate into criminal behavior. We'll also discuss the complex legal system, victim blaming, why people can be so dangerous, and what survivors and the people who do love them need to understand. Because sometimes the most dangerous lies aren't the ones that we do tell other people. Sometimes they're the lies that we tell ourselves about the person that we love. This is Liars and Lovers. Hi, Claudia. Thanks for joining me, sweetheart.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having
No,
me.
thank you for joining me on your crazy schedule and being pulled in every different direction. I really, really appreciate it.
You know what? The moment you asked, I knew there was nowhere else that I would rather be than right here with you.
You're so sweet. So let's just jump right into it because you are a woman of many hats. You're a legal analyst, you're a domestic violence expert, but I feel out of any possible title, the most important title you have is being a survivor. What led you to use your experience? And just for the listeners, I want them to understand, we're not going to go down that route of pertaining to talking about your specific situation, as I'll call it, because I don't believe in having this podcast used as a weapon per se, if you want to call it that. And I'm not about re-victimization. You're comfortable with your situation. You already know what it is. If it's your story to tell, I want you to be to tell the story on your own and not for me to probe you about it. So I just want to give everyone the caveat of that as they're listening of like, hey, if you're looking for juicy details, gossip, and want to hear someone else's story, this is not the place to do it. So going back to that, knowing all of your job titles, all of the hats that you wear, they're probably really pretty ones. What was the determining factor that made you use your experience to enter all of these different hat roles?
I do like to wear a good hat, so let's start with that one. For me, I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. And I decided that that reason for what I went through would be for me to have the opportunity to share about it and help others, because what I have realized and experienced myself is that we don't like to talk about domestic violence. You know, mental health is coming along pretty well, and some other topics that have been taboo for a long time.
Yeah.
But this one still, people don't want to discuss. And I don't like that, because not talking about it is what gives it so much power. So I decided that I wanted to use my platform to talk about it, to talk about my experience, but also just to talk about domestic violence as a whole, because the more we do that, the less scary it is, the less taboo it is. And then the more people are going to get help along the way.
Of course. And I think because the term domestic violence is automatically assumed with just it being physical hands-on contact, that some people may not even realize that they're in a relationship that's consisting of domestic violence. So other than physical contact, what other forms of domestic violence are there?
That is a great question. And I want to say physical violence is horrific and obviously can end in death, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I feel like some of the other forms can be much harder to heal from. So things like psychological abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, reproductive abuse. And if you want me to hit these and kind of define some of them, I can do that as well.
Uh-huh.
Immigration abuse, religious abuse. I mean, basically anything where a partner can take control of the other partner
Yeah.
and do their thing and force that person to do what they want them to do under the guise of control, then that can turn into or be an abusive behavior.
Why do you think it's so difficult for the victim in a relationship to recognize the signs of abuse?
Because we want to believe in love, right? We want to first off think that we would never enter into a situation that would turn bad.
Yeah.
But in addition to the abusive side, that abuser has, generally speaking, a good side as well. And that's what we see first. So we fall in love with that side. Some victims think that they can heal the person or fix the person. And we just want to believe in that moment that's good. You'll hear people say a lot of times, when it's good, it's so good.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of laugh at that now when I hear it, because that is an abusive sign right there, because that means it can be really bad sometimes too.
Yeah.
And I think we just want to believe in that love and romance and that we can conquer all. And that's what we carry forward in those moments of abuse.
It's funny because you're saying like the phrase, when it's good, it's good. But just as you mentioned, what people withhold is the phrase, but when it's bad, it's bad. And I'm thinking to even myself and my dating history, which is kind of why I didn't really mean to smirk when you were saying that, but it was more in terms of the light bulb went off in my head. And now I'm thinking like, okay, well, this is kind of making sense. Like I didn't realize, I mean, I wanted to do the podcast to use it as a learning tool for everyone else, but having this conversation with you, I'm already like, should I be taking notes and what am I thinking just for my own self? Um, Now, with regards to relationships, the abuse, do you think that it happens from the beginning, right from the get go, or is it like a gradually learned behavior that just ultimately escalates?
I would say it's not a learned behavior on the side of the abuser,
Okay.
but what they do is, if you go on date one
Yeah.
and the dude or lady punches you right when you get there, you probably are going to walk away, right?
I would hope so.
So they're going to, I would hope so, unless you're at Fight Club. But otherwise, they're going to ease into it. They're going to test your boundaries. They're going to test the waters. They're going to see what they can get away with. They're also at the same time going to form that relationship bond, the real one
Yeah.
that they want the victim to believe in, so that they have the ability to escalate that behavior as they go on.
Do you think that there are certain warning signs that are more prevalent in the beginning of a relationship of abuse versus later on? Whether it's 3, 6 months down the road, because the abuse may not start necessarily at the beginning. Because again, they're learning their victim. They're learning what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And I mean that in terms of the offender, because things may get done at the beginning of the relationship that may not necessarily happen at the end.
Absolutely. So I'm going to use an example and then go into some other things.
Yeah.
So the first date that I ever went on with my abuser, I got there, we were at a restaurant and he ordered a bottle of wine. That
Okay.
sounds great, right? Like
Yeah,
it sounds
no.
super romantic and very cool.
Yeah, of course.
That's not a red flag in and of itself. Looking back though, he didn't ask me if I liked wine. He didn't ask me if I wanted wine.
Okay.
He didn't ask me if I wanted that wine. That was a test. That was a test of control and boundaries to see how I was going to react. Fortunately, I reacted probably like most of us would and thought it was super cool and sexy and whatever else.
Yeah.
So testing boundaries early on. And again, that one thing would not end the relationship, but it's just where you want to start paying attention. Jealousy is another big one. And it's something that we like to romanticize. Oh, they're just jealous because they love me so much. Is that it?
Yeah.
Do they really not want you to wear that cute dress because they don't want other men looking at you because they're jealous or because they want to control you? Isolation is another big one that people will start out doing. Oh, they just want to spend all their time with you. And you'll notice these patterns, all these things seem super romantic and cool, and they just love me so much. But it's really testing those boundaries at the same time, pulling you away from your support system that would help you see these things long term.
Now, speaking of support systems, I know just from my experiences, I've had family and friends see me, ask me about my relationships, and then they're telling me, well, maybe this is a problem or maybe that's a problem. What do you think are warning signs that outside people can go ahead and possibly hear or think to possibly say, that's a red flag? Maybe I should help my friend, family member, whoever it is in that relationship.
So I would say any change in pattern is going to be a big one. So if I go out every Friday night with the girls and now I have this new guy and I no longer do that because he doesn't want me to, he wants me to spend all my time with him.
Mhm.
That could be a red flag that other people will notice. Behavior changes or personality changes. So my family said that I was a shell of myself, that I wasn't Claudia
Yeah.
anymore. And they noticed that and saw that right away. So that would be something. The isolation. So they're not calling you as much. If you call your mom every day and now mom doesn't hear from you, and it's because, oh, I'm just spending so much time with my new man and he wants me all to himself.
Mm-mm.
Another red flag.
Yeah.
Clothing changes. So, again, you wear something, you do something a certain way. Now that's altered. It can even be food, uh, exercise, anything like that, that there's suddenly a change that is attributed to your new partner.
Mhm.
That's something other people can be aware of and maybe file away or start to question.
It's a good list because now I'm thinking just how many of those, because sometimes they'll gradually happen where someone will start
Mhm.
with one and then they'll transition and do more. And I feel like sometimes the exercise component is first, where it's I'm going to physically change what I look like. That way they're going to tell me it's a more healthy lifestyle. But in terms of they just want me to look a certain way. And then from there, it trickles into, oh, he doesn't like blondes. I'm going to become a brunette. Or if I'm going to wear this, he wants me to dress a certain way. And then they're the scapegoat of that, or better, the green screen is here's money to go shopping. Go buy yourself all of these clothes because they want you to physically change the appearance. And I see on social media all the time where girls are getting monies from their husband or their boyfriend, whatever it is. But now I'm thinking about it where they're receiving this money to go get their hair done, go get their nails done. From the female perspective, it's great because I get a day at the spa. But we now have to think, because I'm having this conversation with you, is the man going ahead and providing this money because who or I guess the image of what is being portrayed as a spouse or a partner does not meet his standards. So it's a very interesting double-edged sword.
It really is because you want to look at that as a gift and a present. And sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be just that. But sometimes it's like you just said, it's now forming, creating the person that you, the abuser, wants the victim to be. And it can be the beginning of financial abuse. So we can go from the spa day and the shopping to, I don't really want you to have to work anymore. I want you to just be able to stay at home.
Yeah.
That's because they want to isolate you and they want to be able to control your finances because then it's that much harder to get away.
Well, speaking of getting away, um, Why is the period after a relationship ends particularly dangerous?
That is a wonderful question. I'm so glad you asked it. And it can actually be up to 2+ years. A lot of people think it's the first 2 weeks to 10 days or 10 days to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But it can really go years after a relationship ends. My abuser just restarted stalking me, and it's been over 20 years.
Wow.
Um, right. And you look at the Tepe case, Spencer and Monique Tepe, she and her ex had been divorced over 10 years.
Yeah.
But the reason is because abusers thrive on control.
Mhm.
It is not necessarily the abuse itself. So it's not, oh, I want to punch this person. Oh, I want to tell her what to wear. It's the control factor. They want to be in charge. And when the victim leaves, they are losing control.
Yeah.
So that becomes the time when that abuser becomes frantic sometimes because now what they've been doing isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
So they have to amp it up potentially, or even say, well, if I can't have her, no
No
one
one
can.
can. That's such a common statement when dealing with cases that lead to loss of life. I don't want to say the M word or anything like that. I don't like the sound of it, because it's predominantly men that are saying, well, if I can't have her, no one can. And then it's because of the jealousy, the obsession, the stalking takes place because he doesn't have control of her, but at least he can see what he's doing. And then probably the rage builds up because she's living the independent lifestyle and he thinks he knows her better. So she should be going to certain places and doing certain things. And because it's not his norm, that increases the level of rage that he has, which sometimes when we're taking a look at crime scenes, there's more rage indicative at that crime scene, especially damage done to the victim, uh, varying from offender because of their level of anger.
You hit the nail on the head right there because that rage builds and builds, and then they take it out on that individual, just like you said, because they know them better. They're supposed to belong to the abuser because you're property to
Yes.
them, essentially. You're not a person anymore, you're theirs.
Yeah.
And when you step out of that role and they see you gaining independence, autonomy, that is unacceptable. And that rage builds. And unfortunately, the way that some people handle that is by harming the other individual.
Yeah. I hate this question because it's a question within a question. And I'm going to be very frank, it irritates the living shit out of me because it's
I'm
the
so excited.
talk about like amping up a question here. Because I think that to ask a victim this question is got to be one of the most idiotic things. Because I believe that they don't even have the answer, but I'm going to give you the question anyway. My question to you is why the question, why didn't you just leave? A harmful question. Because I think it's not only harmful, I think it's idiotic. I'm definitely not going to hold back regarding this one because it's offensive and they're already in a heightened state of emotion given the circumstances because they've learned that the behavior of which they were experiencing was not healthy. And I'm not going to use the words not normal, but it's pretty applicable at the same time. Because this is a question of why didn't you just leave? You're not asking that question during the time a victim is being victimized. This is post-victimization. This is post-realization, going through counseling, going through the therapeutic process of learning what the negative behaviors were. Asking why didn't you just leave is not the appropriate question at that time.
It's never the appropriate question, to be honest with you. And I agree with you. That's like saying to the rape victim, "Well, why were you wearing that outfit? Well, why were you walking down that street?" You're victim blaming.
Yeah.
And when you do that to a victim of domestic abuse, you're also making a lot of assumptions. You're assuming that it was safe to leave, that you had the money, you had the means, you had kids that you could just pick up and take with you. Pets are commonly used to control victims. I think about 50% of victims delay leaving because of fear of what will happen to a pet.
Yeah.
So when somebody asks that, why didn't you just leave question, you are now putting all the blame onto the person that has been suffering, likely in silence, and finally got not only the strength, but all the other factors in place so that they could move to safety. And now you're re victimizing them by blaming them on not leaving sooner. It's not cool.
No. um, when we're talking about the safety of leaving, that is kind of the ideal time frame for a victim of abuse to report the abuse. But it's not as easy as walking into a police department and saying, "Hey, I need to speak to someone, and this is what I need to do." So I kind of want to go into some of the um, challenges and issues, I'll say it that way, of vi- that the victims face going into and trying to ask for help when they need help and then when they want to report the abuse.
Yeah. So the first thing that a lot of victims face is regret. Again, they still love this person, they still care about this individual. And when it's good, it's good. So they're going to face regret a lot of times. And I don't have the stats in front of me, but a large number of arrests that occur or charges that occur on abusers end up getting dismissed because the victim either recants or decides not to continue to cooperate with law enforcement. So that's problem one. Problem two is quite often it's a he said, she said, or she
She said,
said,
and
he said, whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
But there often aren't tangible evidentiary items unless there are bruises, medical records, things like that. So that's another issue that they face. And then, to be quite honest, a lot of law enforcement personnel still just really aren't trained exceptionally when it comes to domestic abuse. And so they might not believe the victim, and that might show in their behavior. And so the victim gets upset and just says, well, this isn't worth it. They kind of, again, feel re victimized in having to tell the story over and over again. Those are some of the primary issues. And then facing your abuser, if it does go to court, then they're going to have to testify most likely. So they're going to have to get on a stand and face that abuser, which can be very challenging for a lot of victims.
What do you think that people misunderstand about the evidence required in a domestic violence case? Because I've seen it before where allegations are made, and obviously there's a difference between an allegation and an actual event taking place, where prosecutors need the appropriate evidence. But there's a big misunderstanding that is out there when prosecuting DV cases. And I think that just the general public does have a misunderstanding of what exactly can be used in a case like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of things that can be used. So if we're talking about physical violence, sometimes it is a little easier because, again, you have those marks, you have potential ER records or other doctor records that will be used as evidence in that case. But documenting incidents can be used as well. So if I just go to somebody, law enforcement, and say, well, this happened to me 2 weeks ago, and then it happened again yesterday, yeah, I'm telling you, and that's great. But if I bring to you, on my phone or on paper, actual documentation of on this date at this time, this is exactly what happened, and it's
Yeah.
all written down, and I've done that, week after week, that can be used as evidence as well. Witness statements can be used. And, we don't want to drag children into situations like this, but unfortunately, sometimes they are the witnesses. Neighbors can be witnesses to arguments or fights that they hear or see. Cell phone records, location records, text messages, all of those things can be used as evidence in cases like this. And I'm not saying it's necessary to have all of that, but I also want to make a point, Lisa, that whether or not somebody prosecutes the case does not define whether or not someone was a victim, because prosecutors look at cases as, can I win this? Can
Yes.
I go to court and win? It's not, do I believe it,
Yeah.
or did this happen? It's, can I go in front of a jury and get all 12 of them, most likely to say guilty? And if they don't believe that, they're not going to prosecute the case.
I hate that.
Super unfortunate.
Yeah.
I had to learn that the hard way in another incident that I had to deal with. And so I think it's really important for victims and survivors to understand you need to redefine justice. And the way I have done that is by saying, if I do everything that I can to move this incident forward, that's all I can do. I can't control what happens next. So I have to let that equal justice for me and let that close the book and move forward.
Piggybacking off of that, and it's not even on my list of questions because now my mind is just going. I can't imagine being a victim in a domestic violence situation where I get out of the situation that I'm in because I have the safety and comfort of family and friends around me. And then I go ahead and I say, you know what? I'm going to go to the police. I'm going to report my abuse. I'm going to take control and power of this situation because it's finally earned and it's not going to be taken away from me. So I walk into an agency's office. I meet with a detective. I give everything over, interviews, proof, whatever I have pertaining to evidence that will support my allegation. Then I go ahead and hear, okay, well, I'm going to talk to the ADA, massively the ADA of some sort of criminal division, sex crimes, whatever the division is going to be for the DA's office. To then be told, sorry, the DA has declined to prosecute. I can't even begin to imagine how I would feel in that situation, knowing the fact of A, I went through what I went through, but B, I finally have my own power. And this is the shit that they just served me on a silver platter. It's there's got to be some sort a better threshold in the legal community on disregarding how many cases can I win? Or I hate the word, but percentages. Like, what's your win-loss in court? And I've heard attorneys talk about this before. I have a 98% success rate at trial. Bullshit. Like, let's just call it what it is. But again, the level of frustration and anger I'm even feeling here sitting and having this conversation with you, because just thinking about it, and I don't really think that many people think about that. The strength that it takes to report it and then have to deal with that rejection. They're re-victimized, not to the degree they were before, but now the criminal justice system is being used as a weapon to re-victimize them. It's mind-boggling.
I can tell you from personal experience, and again, it wasn't a domestic situation. It was actually the chief of police who kidnapped and assaulted me. I experienced everything that you're saying, where I had the evidence, I had text messages, I had phone data, et cetera, witnesses, blah, 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 and got told basically everything that you just said. And for me, it was a political reason. They did not want to prosecute because of politics. So it did super suck. I can tell you that. And I was really angry.
I'm angry
But
for you
that
right
is
now.
what allowed, right. I mean, it still makes me mad. But that's what allowed me to redefine justice, because I did everything I could. You know what I mean? And I couldn't control that some idiot DA is too afraid to go up against a town that he just wanted to close the book and make it go away. I can't control that. He's the one that's got to sleep at night dealing with that. And if he can, well, I guess he's probably a sociopath too. But for me, it didn't strip me of my power, because I still did everything I could do. And that had to be enough for me.
Girl, look at you now. You are
Right?
everywhere. And like, I'm not really the biggest fan of Kelly Clarkson, but it's like, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. You are literally a phoenix going from your situation to where you are now. People are tuning in and seeing you on TV. And if there's not a bigger, I'm going to just drop the F bomb. Haha, fuck you. Like, I made it. You didn't kill me. Like, girl, you succeeded.
That is how I feel. And I will tell you, when I decided to leave my abuser, I was so damaged, I can admit that, and broken that I went to see a therapist, not to heal,
Yeah.
but so that a stranger could tell me I was making the right decision. That's how much I didn't trust myself. That's
Okay.
how much I had been beaten down into submission, was believing I didn't even know what was best for me. I couldn't even make that decision. And I went to this stranger to make it for me, basically, or to say, yes, dum dum, you need to get out of there. So to look at that person
Hmm.
and now this person, I'm pretty fucking proud of that.
You sure as shit better than B. Like, there's no other way you should feel right now. I want to talk about a different hat. And we're going to switch them up like Kentucky Derby ones.
I love it.
I know you love a
Yes.
good hat. Um, Working with law and crime as an analyst, how do you approach discussing cases involving domestic violence and obviously intimate partner violence? Because it's not always classified as domestic partner, um, just in general, but especially given your history.
I have to separate myself first and foremost. And I can use my experience, obviously,
Hmm.
because that's where a lot of my expertise comes from. But emotionally, I have to separate myself from it. And what I really try to do is give the audience the nuts and bolts of it. I try to explain why this person might have acted the way that they did, why this person might have lived in this nightmare for years and years and never told a soul. So I try to bring that person to life, especially if they aren't with us any longer.
Hmm.
I try to bring them to life with dignity and with respect
Thank you.
and with an understanding of what they went through so that other people can see that and understand a little better and learn not to ask, why didn't they just leave?
And piggybacking off of that, I think that a big part of what you just said, of explaining the case, utilizing evidence, not passing your own personal agenda and or thoughts because of your past history, but I think that needs to be learned by the general public, that just because you're watching a high profile case unravel on TV, you can't turn a family's or the members of the community of the victim into glorified entertainment. And I feel that in a lot of situations, certain cases that have hit the media, it's become an entertainment spectacle. And it's forgotten about that this person is a victim. This person has family. This person has parents. They possibly could have children. Social media is everywhere. They could be online following the case, reading the articles, looking at a feed, and they're in the comments too. So, if there's one thing that you think that the public should learn about that, what do you think it would be?
I'm going to use an example on this one and not
Okay.
my own. Let's look at P. Diddy and Cassie.
Yes.
When you think of that case, other than baby oil, probably the first thing that comes to mind is that elevator video or that hotel hallway video
That's exactly what
where
just happened
he,
to me. Yeah.
that's what everybody sees because that's what was played over and over and over again. That's what was sensationalized. What we should have been talking about was the coercion, the control, the gaslighting, the manipulation that she went through for years that turned her into a person who would regularly call escorts to come and be with her in front of her boyfriend and do all these things that she didn't want to do because that's what he wanted. That's what we should have been focusing on. And instead, we had people saying, well, I'm sure she liked the money. Oh, well, she stuck around. Oh, look, she's smiling in that birthday picture. So obviously she wasn't, treated that terribly.
Wow.
So people want to turn the victims into monsters based on a photograph at a birthday party or based on the fact that the abuser had money. And then they also at the same time want to sensationalize this hotel hallway video because that's what brings in clicks and views. And we really need to focus on what put the victim in that place and in that mindset to begin with.
So, talking about the sensationalism of crimes involving victims, and especially ones that are publicly out there, um, what role do you think the media has in responsibly reporting content?
Respect, first and foremost. And, people are innocent until proven guilty. That is their legal right in this country. That is, a right that we all have. And I do believe in that. And we jump to conclusions very often based on pieces of evidence that we have seen that may or may not even be accurate. So I think the media needs to report fairly and accurately based on facts and respect all parties involved and let the public know what could be occurring. And what I mean by that is if this is a domestic situation, they have the obligation to explain why somebody might act that way, why they might be smiling in that birthday photograph, even though they got beat up 2 days before. And that's where my role comes in, is to have the opportunity to do that.
And I appreciate you doing that because I get phone calls sometimes from media outlets saying, "Oh, you've got a history and training in body language and or verbal expression or just polygraphs in general." And I feel like it's a very big and important thing because it's making sure that if you're going to put someone on the news or any media outlet to discuss a topic, that they are more than qualified to do so. Because a lot of people, and I hate to say it, will just go on TV, run their mouth, say what they need to say, and that's the end of it. There's no data, there's no backing, there's no vetting process. And then what happens is you get one person saying one thing, and that's the last thing that you want going viral. And next thing you know, it is the one thing going viral. So it's all
Of course
about
it is.
it sucks. And there's just so much misinformation out there, not even just with the internet and people having conversations, that it's no longer you have to walk into a room and kind of figure out like who's the stupidest person because you know that there's probably a couple of them because they're all repeating the same thing that everyone is saying at the same time.
And it's the telephone game as well. So they're repeating the wrong thing, but then it's going to get morphed along the way too. And before you know it, item A is now item Z
Yeah.
and is a shell of what actually occurred in the beginning.
Yeah. So I feel like that happens a lot where when a case breaks and it's always the first expert that they get out there, either on scene or they bring in as commentary. It's sometimes stories are rushed too quickly to get out there because if the cops don't have all the information, no offense, there's no anchor that's going to have all of the information. You're not going to get a witness that's not going to go to the cop. That's going to go to an anchor before they go to the police, or at least I would hope so,
Mhm.
because that is the appropriate thing to do. But we both know that some people like to chase clout and they want to get their name out there. That's fine, personal agenda. But if you're going to have a personal agenda, make sure that you're reporting the correct information first and not throwing out whatever it is.
And sensationalizing it again, as
Yes.
you mentioned. So today, and I won't name the case, that's not related, but somebody talking about this particular case that's very high profile
Mhm.
and very media driven right now said, well, this medical examiner cannot rule out foul play. And I said, well, they can't rule it in either.
Yep.
So, like, let's be fair to both
Sides.
sides here. Instead of just putting out that sound bite that makes it sound nefarious, let's be real. Let's report honestly about what's going on. And this was not a reporter.
Mhm.
This was somebody who has an agenda, as you mentioned. And it's just sad to see that happen, because now people are going to run with that narrative instead of the narrative that we don't have all the information yet. So we can't make any conclusion until we do.
And I feel like the worst thing is when there's an active trial going on, people are just coming out of the woodworks. And I'm not talking anchors, I'm just talking social media in general, where people think that they are now just an armchair detective. They're court certified expert. They have the training, they have everything they need, and they can go ahead and provide the commentary to the court trial. And there's a very big difference between actually being an expert versus having an opinion in the public sector, if you want to call it. And there are some times where we've seen where some of these messages are either being re-reported by media and or sometimes even brought into the courtroom to be used as evidence, which is absolutely mind-boggling. It's just the Joe Schmo on the internet with a keyboard. And this is going back to even Twitter when we only had 160 characters to use. It's mind-blowing what people, keyboard commando, as I like to call it, they just get on the computer and they start typing out, and it could affect a trial. And I think a lot of people forget that.
It absolutely can. And I love doing a good callback, as you noticed, because I continue to do it today. But look at the Chris Watts case.
Oh, yeah.
So when he was in jail initially, there were people going on the internet and saying, oh, I had an affair with him. Oh, I had an affair with him. Look at me. I had an affair. Not me. But, that's
I
what
get
all
it.
these people were saying.
Yeah.
And that utilized resources and time of CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, and local police, because now they had to go track all these idiots down to find out, no, I just wanted to say something on the internet to pretend like I was super cool and important.
Ugh.
So that's another issue that comes when these keyboard warriors just want to draw attention to themselves. You can genuinely negatively affect an investigation and waste time, energy, resources, and money.
Now, speaking of resources, when we're talking about victims of crimes, do you have any specific resources that you can share with our listeners to just go ahead and possibly identify that the abuse is taking place, or if they have identified the behavior, kind of resources that they can go ahead and attend to?
Absolutely. So, virtually every community has a domestic violence shelter or advocacy center. And I would recommend going there if you are able to. And if not, there is a national center. I don't have the phone number memorized,
It's
but
okay.
I believe they also have text message available as well. But that is a great place to start for a lot of reasons, because they can often offer you safety planning, which is really important.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide you want to report it to police, they can often facilitate that. So they can actually have the police respond to that location and sit with you while you're giving the information and giving your statement. They often have financial resources, the shelter. They can help you figure out what to do with pets and children, and how to manage all of those things as you move forward. So I am a big fan of your local domestic violence shelter or advocacy center, because those people generally are trained experts, or at least trained individuals in helping a victim or a survivor walk those steps to becoming healed and independent.
And speaking of other resources than that, we typically will rely on family and friends for um, physical, emotional, social, all of those different various forms of support, because it's not just one support system where it's going to be, hey, I'm going to talk to you. Let's work things out. Let me do that. But there's so many different ways that family and friends can support. Um, what do you think is the best way for those family and friends to support the victim to ensure and make sure that the victim is not feeling judged? They're not feeling pressured, misheard, misled, things like that.
Saying, I believe you, and what can I do to best support you? Because what we want to do as humans is we want to tell that person what they need to do. And generally, that does not come from a bad place. It's not coming from a place of not loving, but it's generally not helpful because the victim is already fragile. They already don't trust themselves. They don't know what to do. They're coming to you for help. And then you start to berate them with all these different things that they have to do and need to do and should have already done. And in your mind, as the family or friend, you're helping, but it can actually have the opposite effect where they're just going to go back to what was comfortable because that was easy. So I would say, I believe you. And how can I best support you? And then be there because they might not be ready yet.
Yeah.
And that is their decision. So be available for when they are ready to make the necessary changes in their life to be safe.
I think the other side of that too is if you're going to tell a victim that you will be there to help them and support them, show up.
Yes.
Because I feel that if a situation has arisen and we do have a victim and they are ready to leave and they don't feel emotionally or physically supported to either leave, and or the other side of it is they've left and they feel alone. So it's making sure you keep your word. If you're going to take the time to have the that hard, rough conversation, you need to be there on the back end for the other hard and rough conversations. Like stand up, be there, keep your word, because right now, that's what that victim is holding on to. You are part of their hope. You are going to be part of their new journey. So be there. Don't just be words, be actions as well.
Yes, if you say you're going to do it, then do it. And the other thing is be emotionally prepared for what could happen because it can take victims, the average is 7 times to
Mhm.
leave. So that's 7 back and forths. That's 7, hey, friend, I did it. I'm out. Hmm. Yeah, I still love him. I'm going back. So the support system needs to be emotionally prepared for that as well and refrain from judgment and continue to be there. And how can I support you?
Now, this question's for you. After everything that you've been through, that roller coaster up and down throughout life, which we're still experiencing every day because it's not like the Truman Show where every day is the same day. What gives you hope right now?
What gives me hope is that more people are going to find the strength to move into a place of safety and not just of safety, but of thriving. I want survivors, victims, and then survivors to have the things that they deserve and to believe in the things that they deserve. So I have hope for that every single day that every survivor is going to say, I deserve to be happy and truly believe it and then find that happiness.
And I could not think of a better way to end our episode. Just asking for hope for everyone, for everything, and especially those in their situations. We would hope that you hear this and understand that you have two advocates on your behalf ready to help you, Claudia and I. We're accessible on social media. Send us an email. You have a thought, be like, listen, I'm in this situation. There's a possibility I could be in it. Can you help me, guide me? Next steps, whatever it is. Like, that is what I love about not only my podcast, using as an opportunity of a learning tool. It's more in terms of understanding that even though there is a member of the public, we are still human beings as experts and we are still accessible. So I just want to say thank you again for being here with me. Um, I hate to say, I don't like using the words, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Um, Obviously, considering the nature of our conversation, but because it's not an easy one to have. It's definitely not. And again, I do appreciate you, and I know that we were talking before we jumped on the recording together, but we are going to do a couple of more episodes together, but specifically involving certain cases. We're not going to tip anyone's hat, and I guess hat's the key word of today's episode. So I hope it hasn't turned into a drinking game. And that we're going to just dive into a couple of more cases specifically and talk about the perspective of kind of what went wrong, what could have been done differently, and go from there. But again, thank you, Claudia, so much for being here. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Lisa, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, thank you.